and welcome to Season 6 of the MRX Lab, the show by FlexMR, where this year we're on a mission to uncover the value created by the brilliant people in our industry and how they bring that value into their organisations. Today, I'm really lucky to be joined by Andy Morrison, Market Research Specialist at HSB. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Michael. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm good. So to kick this off, Andy, I just want to pass it over to you and let you introduce yourself to the audience, a bit about you and your background within market research.
Cool. Have you got long enough? Where to start? So I started out initially doing commercial photography. I was doing that at Holland & Barrett, Sainsbury's. Naturally started looking at the metrics and everything that sit behind it. Started building an interest in it there, just understanding from a visual format and an operational side of things. From there, started looking at VOC, transitioned more into the CX world after managing a bit of a category as a DCSP at Argos. And then found myself moving to non-profits, so the housing industry, and a lot of the not ideal things that were going on with that. And then moved to ending up in insurance and landing up here now with HSB.
It's quite a journey. I mean, a lot of people that I speak to in market research is, they come from all types of different backgrounds. And I think that's the beautiful thing about our industry in a lot of ways. Like you mentioned, you started off in photography and you've ended up within sort of data and everything. So it's quite a journey, really. And it's quite rare that you find people that just go straight into it, that they chose the career of market research rather than thinking, actually, I'm quite good with numbers and I'm quite passionate in the world of business. So sort of moving on from market research, obviously the theme of today's episode is discovering a bit more about ADHD, and that's something that you've been quite open about on social media, is your ADHD diagnosis. Do you want to just talk about that, give a bit of background to your diagnosis?
Yeah, of course. I appreciate the opportunity to do so. I think it's a great theme and great topic. So again, thanks for having us on. I have combined type, so that's hyperactive, but not in the same sort of stigma that you would think the hyperactive naughty boy running around going crazy. Probably not the right term to use, but we'll gloss over that. Mine is hyperactivity in the head, so naturally a lot of overthinking, sort of almost like expecting worst case scenario, all the sort of things that come with that, and then an inattentiveness as well. So combating that. So for example, you could ask me a question, we could start talking about it. If this was pre-meds, we could be about five to 10 minutes into a conversation, and I completely forget what that was. A light bulb will go off in my head, and I start thinking about something else, even while I'm talking. It's not to be rude. It's just a case of when your attention is pinged by something else, or there's thoughts coming in constantly. The way I've explained it to people is the equivalent of walking into a football stadium, just to, a bit of a comfort area for me. So if you go into a sports stadium, it's absolutely packed. It's game day, loads of noise, loads of things going on, loads of things to take your attention. Or if you're going on a tour, you walk in, it's completely dead silent. So that's the entire difference between the two. Not to go straight into the medication route. I got diagnosed October last year. No, that's wrong. Year before. And it's been an absolute game changer, to be honest. And I know we're going to talk about this shortly, but from a career standpoint, you would go through cycles of burnout, trying to over-deliver, assuming that you aren't delivering. You would add context that isn't always there, and just perpetuate a cycle of that. And adding through rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I don't know if you've come across that term before, but basically it amplifies your emotions. And without things like CBT, meds, or investigating any of this, I think that's a cycle I would have probably perpetuated. If you were to go on my LinkedIn profile, you can see it was happening probably every 2 years. So you go through the cycle of starting a new job, massive excitement, shelving absolutely everything because you've got that dopamine hit of a new job, a new fresh start, and just running a million mile an hour into that head first, setting a new sort of level of expectation when you first go in there, which you can then only drop from. Does that make sense? and then you would hit burnout, put yourself under pressure to try and meet prior standards, just negatively assuming the worst. So, and you would go through these spirals fairly regularly. But yeah, I figured it was something I needed to be really open and honest and transparent about, partly because I didn't want all the answering questions on a one-to-one basis and having to repetitively explain why I needed certain things, like audio commentary and instructions isn't always the best. Things can slip. So one of the main ways I get around that is through written comms. Sometimes people aren't that it's necessary or why I'm asking, but it really helps things out. So yeah, there's loads to talk about this today, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think just picking up on your point there that you talked about the hyperactivity and sort of the stereotype of that is just like we mentioned before the call about the running around and not paying attention and just naughty boys at school sort of thing. And I think with yourself being honest about it and becoming more in the spotlight, I think a lot of people have gained traction with ADHD and are becoming a bit more clued up on it and are actually realizing, a bit like yourself later in life, because it seems to be something that's diagnosed a lot more when you're a child in your younger years, but like yourself in later years, you've gone and then been diagnosed.
Yeah, I mean, it's through things like masking and stuff like that. Like statistically, women are a lot better at doing it with their internal hyperactivity and sort of suppressing that to try and meet social norms. It's not as common in men. Again, it's more that external piece with men. So, but with the rise of social media, people talking about things more, the natural transition and stigma of mental health anyway, it's almost been a knock-on effect of that. I feel like as an entire populace, we're a lot more tolerant of difference than perhaps we would have been sort of anywhere between 20 and 50 years ago. So things have changed a lot. My mum actually apologized to me when I got my formal diagnosis, which was, entirely unnecessary because it was very, very different circumstances from now to then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, I think the shift in education as well on anything to do with mental health, but specifically some of these things like ADHD and just transform the way that we look at it as a society and the way we treat it as well. So keeping it relevant to market research and marketing, in a job that requires strong attention to detail, coordination with a lot of stakeholders, multitasking oftentimes on different projects, what have you learned since your diagnosis to stay effective and work with your ADHD?
Leaning into it. So I'll talk about these sort of characteristics and traits that I've tried to lean into more. And then the sort of physical, actual, sort of operational steps. It's leaning into that in the same way that if you were trying to learn more about a product or a market, or so, like you would investigate it, see what you can learn about it, see what's applicable, what's going to be of benefit, what's a problem that not a problem, again, probably the wrong term to use, but something you can potentially mitigate if it's causing hassle. And then just start to put in methods of an experimentation style on things. So like a lot of people talk about like cold showers. So I'll be like, all right, I don't know if that'll have any impact, but let's try it. The medication route, there's a lot of people that say it doesn't work for them, and it doesn't for everybody. But let's go through titration and then try and see if it works for me. And thankfully it has. So all of that test and learn piece. From a physical side of things, so now, for example, HSB have been amazing in terms of meeting needs. I'm using a stand-up desk. That stops a lot of stimming. So you might see a lot of people just like clicking pens or twiddling them or flicking things around. So you would be doing that almost constantly. So from a physical standpoint, it's just having everything around you from a tool basis to deliver the absolute best that you can. Then you've got like softwares to, like, I can speak at the rate that I think. I can't write at the rate that I think. So for example, if we were having a webinar now, you were just talking to me or giving me information, I would be like this the entire time. You'd be thinking I'm disengaged, I'm not listening. Nope, I'm just taking notes because I'm that worried and paranoid that I'd forget something. that I'd need to do that to accommodate and mitigate it. But with things like Otter AI and every other version of that, Copilot, you can almost capture a lot of that without the need to worry. So I can be more present. I can have conversations. I can not have that anxiety about something that hasn't even happened yet and be in the moment, which is amazing. There's also tools like Dragon AI. So again, voice to text, LinkedIn, all the way around. Saves a lot of problems there. And then it's things like prioritization can be a really difficult one, especially from the project piece. You know, how many different moving parts there are, budgets, conversations, everything flying around. Using boards like planners, it sounds very simplistic, but I journal quite a bit as well. I'm a massive advocate for that. So writing absolutely everything down, do this inside and outside of work. Everything that you've got on, right, what can I do something about now? Is it in my sphere of control or not? If it's not, cross it out. Then you've got a list of things that you need to do. Pushing that through an Eisenhower matrix, so things that are important and urgent, just important, or should do them, but they're not urgent, and vice versa, which helps me then allocate how does that align to what my job role is, what's expected of me, and, you know, team deliverables, business deliverables, and things bigger than that. And then I can look at that in my Outlook calendar, putting it into that directly, like, right, okay, let's do what's called time blocking. What are my non-movables, whether that's, you know, I've got to go and pick the kids up, or, you know, we're working in London down that way because we've got offices in London, Birmingham, and Manchester. So putting in all the non-negotiables is right. Okay, so what have I got left of tasks now? And then adding a little bit of a buffer, knowing that I have a bit of a perfectionistic trait where rather than reaching out for help always, it's still a bit of a barrier for me now. It's something I'm working on, to be completely transparent. Would always try and go above and beyond. So I need to allow myself that extra little bit of time to make sure that I can do it once and do it right first time and get the project done, completed out the door. And it's that constant drop-ins as well. Have them probably bi-weekly now with internal stakeholders, and just being very transparent about where things are at. So if dates need to move and things of that regard. So it's just, in a nutshell, it's open, honest, transparent. If you need help, asking for it. A lot of things that you would assume most people do anyway, but it's not always a given. So yeah.
So it's, you know, the two key points out of that are, you know, organization, you know, with the journaling and making sure, you know, your calendar's up to date, etc. But also the communication with, you know, your co-workers, stakeholders, but also yourself as well, knowing what you can and can't achieve.
Being more realistic about it. Is a big one, and not being afraid to move things around if it's required. Understanding that you are a person, you're not going to get everything right first time. It's not the way the world works. I would be gobsmacked if anybody went the entirety of 2025 without having to adjust or move things, given, you know, current expectations. I mean, you must have seen that from an agency side as well. So yeah, it's the same client side, just different stakeholders.
Absolutely. And moving on to a bit more in detail study of ADHD within marketing. So there was a survey done of around 3,000 marketers, and 38% of them had a formal ADHD diagnosis, and 77% displayed 4 or more symptoms of ADHD. So just, you know, briefly, what do you make of that information? You know, what's it like compared to the national average of the population, etc.?
I mean, the national average is reported with like the NICE guidelines, and I think an American Journal study tend to be anywhere between, I think, about 3 and 5%. So 38 is massive. Doesn't entirely surprise me. You know, I wouldn't say we're a nosy bunch typically. From the guys that I've met firsthand, I can't speak for everybody, because if you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. We're not all the same. The number it's pretty big. And like I say, if you were to apply that to the populace of about, you know, anywhere between 3 and 5%, it's substantial. I'd be naturally curious to understand why that is. I think, again, wanting to get under the hood of things, understand why things work, naturally being empathetic and wanting to make a bit of a difference and generate positive results, investigate things. It raises dopamine because it's excitement. It's oh, we don't know about that. Well, let's go learn. It's that natural, always kind of wanting more and to understand things fully as we do with ourselves. So yeah, I mean, it's quite a big number. You'll have to send me the study over. It is a proper interesting one, that for sure. But with the incident rate being what it is, that's surprising. I'd be curious to know what the 4 symptoms were. Like, was it all similar, or was it just 4 across the myriad that exist? No, it's an interesting one for sure. It doesn't surprise me,
I think,
given the work that we do, but.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there about curiosity, and it's a common theme, obviously, within market researchers and marketers in general. That curiosity is a great trait to have, and it does you really well. So I guess I'll ask you a question: do you think your ADHD benefits you in a lot of ways within the work you do?
It's a really good question.
You lean into it.
If you understand the why and the potential impact that you can have on the back of it, I'd say so, definitely. If you are in an organization, and I won't name names, where you have been given a task or a problem to define and explore, but you already, based on experience, don't believe that it will move the needle enough, and there's almost like a complacency in where a business believes it's at, and doesn't always want that or have the appetite to do better and want to do more, that can turn the motivating dopamine receptors off. Because if you're going into it and you understand the logic and the rationale behind it, what they're trying to achieve, and you feel like you can help 100%, like the hyper focus is both good and bad. So if you got a challenging deadline, but it's a really interesting piece of work, you really care about it, there's a lot of potential impact in there, you will double down. There's been times I've done overnighters to like just purely through like a loss of it's called time blindness. So you must have been in a flow yourself a few times and you've lost hours. With the hyperfocusing ADHD, I've done that and lost entire days. Like, it's like you forget to eat, and then by the time you do pull your head out of the sort of woods, you're looking at sort of 2-3 a.m. and you're like, how the hell have we got here? So yeah, it's definitely both good and bad, for sure.
And I think one thing that you mentioned about how it helps, one of the things that helps with ADHD within work, but also just dealing with it in general, is communication. So as an agency, we obviously advocate for the use of communities within market research, and but what sort of communities are you part of for ADHD, if any? And do you think that's helped you with the diagnosis, but also living with it?
Through the initial diagnosis phase, or
just afterwards, afterwards.
Yeah, so there are a few online, because ironically hyper-focused about ADHD, which I'm sure is a story that will resonate with that 38% if they're listening to this. There are ADHD Adults UK have like a Reddit style community, so there's the online versions. There are a couple of local ones I go to. I'm going to pay more attention to the one in Hinckley of late. So you have both the broader side of things, which is a more global view. You have the UK view in the online communities, and then there's just a few support groups, one of which I've been to and sort of talked for. So there's a number of different ones out there. I'd encourage anyone to go onto the ADHD UK website to find a load of resources, information on where people can sort of get that education, get that support, and come and attend one.
And as we're drawing to a close with the episode, the last thing that I want to ask you, and it's something that I'm going to run as a theme throughout the following podcasts, is, do you have any words of wisdom, little nuggets of insight that you can give to anyone listening that's helped your journey within the industry, that maybe someone in the audience will find valuable, maybe someone at the start of the career, in the middle, potentially thinking that they may have symptoms of ADHD?
A lot in that question, a lot to unpack. Probe me if I've missed anything, because I probably will. Any words of wisdom? Regardless of where your career type is, be open and honest at a rate that suits you. Don't feel like you have to do it. I just was quite honest and transparent about it because that's what suited me personally. A lot of people are quite private about it. You know, we're all different. You know, we're all on that sort of neurodiverse scale to a degree. We just operate at very extreme ends. So don't be discouraged by that. And yeah, I mean, just dive into it in the same way that you would any sort of project, really. I'm a massive fan of sort of squiggly careers, as it were. So don't feel like you have to be locked into any route. If you've come in on that middle way, the same way I sort of have from that more of a CX background, it's okay. You might have a little bit of a gap to try and plug to get yourself up to that level where you will have that level of confidence that you're happy with. Yeah, just go with the flow, try not to take it too seriously, keep learning, keep improving. And if you don't beat yourself up for it.
I'd implore anyone who's just listening to that, that maybe is at the start of the career or the middle, and look at squiggly careers, because you mentioned that to me. I hadn't heard of that beforehand, but that really puts the mind at rest in some ways, because I know that I can get hyper focused on the sort of trying to keep a linear track of your career when realistically nothing in life works like that. So yeah, that's a brilliant way. Yeah, absolutely.
Same with any plan of distance. Best laid plans. I really wish I had a better version of this, but the Mike Tyson reference of being punched in the gob. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got the best plans in the world, the minute it meets contact, it's all up in the air. So trying not to put too much on that, and just go with your gut, what feels right. Yeah, basically.
I think that's a brilliant place to end, Andy. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those listening at home, I'll be back next month with another brilliant guest to discover how they're facing the challenges within our industry and bringing value into their organisations. So again, thank you, Andy. You've been a brilliant guest.